Welcome back, everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because today, we're diving into one of the most haunting and mysterious stories of the Second World War. The tale of the Iron Coffin, Germany's secret submarine U-864, a vessel built to change the course of history, but doomed to become a steel tomb beneath the North Sea. It began in early 1945, when Nazi Germany was collapsing on every front. Allied bombers ruled the skies, Soviet tanks were closing in from the east, and Hitler's empire was running out of time. But deep within the Norwegian fjords, one submarine was being prepared for a final, desperate mission, Operation Caesar. Her name was U-864, commanded by Captain Ralph Reimer Wolfram, and her orders came directly from Berlin: deliver advanced weapon technology and supplies to Japan, Germany's last Axis ally. The cargo she carried was unlike any other: blueprints for jet engines, components for V-2 rockets, and 67 tons of liquid mercury sealed in steel flasks, essential for building new weapons. If U-864 succeeded, Japan could continue the war with deadly innovations. If she failed, the mission would die with her. On February 6, 1945, U-864 left Bergen, Norway, gliding through icy waters under strict radio silence. But fate had already turned against her. British intelligence had broken Germany's Enigma code, and the Royal Navy knew everything. A single hunter was dispatched to intercept her, the HMS Venturer, commanded by 25-year-old Lieutenant James Launders. What followed would become one of the most extraordinary duels in naval history: a submarine versus another submarine, both submerged, stalking each other through the cold darkness. For hours, Launders' crew listened through their hydrophones, tracking faint propeller sounds below. U-864 was trying to evade detection, zigzagging beneath the waves, unaware that death was following in silence. Launders calculated a firing solution unlike any before: a three-dimensional shot, predicting the enemy's movement underwater. At 12:12 p.m., he ordered the launch of 4 torpedoes. One after another, they sliced through the depths. Minutes later, the crew heard a low, dull explosion, then nothing. U-864 had vanished. No survivors. The sea swallowed the submarine whole. For decades, the story of the Iron Coffin was forgotten, buried under post-war chaos. But in 2003, Norwegian engineers surveying the seabed for a gas pipeline stumbled upon something shocking: the wreck of a German U-boat, split in two, resting 150 meters below the surface near Fedge Island. Inside the shattered hull, researchers found glass vials, aircraft parts, and dozens of corroding steel canisters leaking mercury into the ocean. The forgotten mission had become an environmental disaster. The site was sealed off immediately. Today, U-864 remains entombed on the seabed, her deadly cargo still seeping into the sea, a slow poison from another century. Scientists debate what to do: raise her, or bury her forever beneath layers of sand and concrete. But the ocean doesn't forget. The currents still flow through her twisted remains, humming softly against the iron walls that were once meant to deliver a superweapon. The Iron Coffin is now silent, a warning from history, a relic of desperation, and a grave for 73 men who never knew that their mission would end in the cold, dark peace of the Norwegian Sea. The war ended months later. Germany fell. Japan surrendered. But U-864 never completed her journey. She lies where she sank, her engines rusting, her secrets sleeping, her mercury bleeding slowly into eternity. The last ghost of a dying empire, trapped in an iron coffin beneath the waves. For years after the discovery, the wreck of U-864 became one of the most debated sites in all of maritime history. Scientists, historians, and governments argued over what should be done with the Iron Coffin: disturb her grave to remove the mercury, or leave her sealed forever beneath the seabed. The problem was immense. The submarine lay in two broken halves, more than 150 meters deep, in unstable sediment. The slightest mistake during recovery could release tens of thousands of kilograms of toxic mercury into the surrounding ecosystem, poisoning the North Sea for generations. Norwegian engineers called it a time bomb beneath the waves. Environmental agencies began constant monitoring of the wreck. They detected mercury levels hundreds of times higher than normal in nearby fish, forcing fishing bans around the island of Fedge. Local fishermen told stories of strange, oily patterns in the water, invisible reminders of the submarine still leaking her deadly cargo. For them, the UH-64 was not just history, it was a living threat, pulsing beneath their boats every single day. The Norwegian government faced an impossible choice. To raise the wreck would cost over $130 million and risk releasing deadly toxins. To bury it would mean sealing away 73 German sailors forever, turning their tomb into a sarcophagus of poison. After years of study, the decision was made: the UH-64 would remain where she fell. Crews began the painstaking process of covering the site with a massive concrete and sand dome, designed to trap the mercury and silence the Iron Coffin once and for all. But divers who've seen the wreck say it still feels alive. They describe a strange presence: the air tanks, the twisted metal, the faint outlines of boots and control panels half buried in sand. The pressure is so great that even lights seem to fade faster down there. It's like stepping into a frozen moment in 1945, untouched by time, sealed in cold iron and silence. Historians later uncovered more about her secret mission. UH-64 was carrying not just mercury, but also engine parts for the Me-262 jet fighter, the world's first operational jet aircraft, and components for guided missile systems. Alongside them, blueprints, microfilm, and 2 German engineers traveling to Japan to assist in military research. Had she reached her destination, she might have changed the balance of the Pacific War, giving Japan access to technologies far beyond anything the Allies expected. Instead, fate, luck, and the precision of a young British commander ended that possibility with a single torpedo. It remains one of the only cases in history where a submerged submarine destroyed another submarine while both were underwater. Launders and his crew on HMS Venturer had performed what naval experts once thought impossible: tracking, calculating, and killing a hidden enemy without ever seeing her. The odds were astronomical, yet they succeeded. Today, the wreck of UH-64 lies as both a triumph and a tragedy, the grave of an enemy defeated, but also a reminder that even in victory, the sea keeps its vengeance. The currents that sweep through her broken hull now carry traces of mercury and rust, symbols of both human ambition and its inevitable decay. No one dives there anymore. The area is closed, marked on every maritime chart as a hazard. But sailors passing through sometimes report hearing a dull, metallic echo on their sonar, like a heartbeat deep beneath the water. Some say it's just the currents. Others whisper it's the Iron Coffin herself, still moving slightly, shifting in her sleep, restless after nearly 80 years in darkness. The war ended long ago, but UH-64 remains locked in the moment of her death, a weapon that never fired, a mission that never finished, and a secret that the sea still refuses to fully surrender. Over the decades, the UH-64 transformed from a forgotten war relic into a dark legend whispered among sailors and divers of the Norwegian coast. They called it the Humming Grave because even through modern sonar, the wreck gives off faint, rhythmic echoes, as if the ocean itself remembers the beat of its engines. The site is off limits now, a no-go zone marked by buoys and government warnings, but that hasn't stopped curious adventurers and historians from wondering what still lies sealed inside that broken hull. The mercury has long since corroded its containers. Scientists believe over 4 tons of the toxic metal have already seeped into the seabed, mixing with the silt, creating invisible rivers of poison that shift with every current. Even now, decades later, the ocean floor around Fedge glows faintly on sonar scans, not with radiation, but with the strange metallic density of mercury trapped beneath layers of sand. It's as if the sea refuses to bury what mankind has left behind. For Norway, U-864 is both a technical nightmare and a moral dilemma. The country prides itself on protecting its waters, but here lies a weapon of the past, one that cannot be fought, only contained. The engineers who monitor the wreck call it the silent enemy. It doesn't roar, it doesn't move, yet it kills slowly, molecule by molecule. The British side of the story, however, remains one of daring and genius. Lieutenant James Launders and his crew aboard HMS Venturer performed what many consider to be the most precise submarine attack in history. Using nothing but sound and mathematics, they tracked a target they could not see, predicted its movement through 3 dimensions, and fired torpedoes in a pattern that no computer had ever designed. Launders' last transmission to command after the sinking was cold and factual: target destroyed. No survivors. He never knew what U-864 was carrying. Only years later would it become clear that his decision may have prevented the Axis from sharing advanced weaponry that could have prolonged the war in the Pacific. But victory comes with ghosts. Launders rarely spoke about the mission again. In private letters, he once wrote, "I have thought often about those men, locked below, knowing their fate before it came. The sea is cruel, but the silence after is worse." And silence is what defines U-864 now. Divers who have approached the wreck report that the submarine feels unnervingly intact in some places. The bow section split open from the torpedo strike, but the stern still eerily preserved. Dials, wheels, even wooden panels are frozen in place. The captain's chair is still there, tilted slightly, as if someone had just stood up moments before the blast. Marine archaeologists describe a sensation of pressure not from the depth, but from the atmosphere, a heaviness that feels human. "It's like walking into a moment that refuses to end," one diver said. "You feel eyes on you, even though you know no one's left alive." And perhaps that's the greatest truth about the Iron Coffin, that it's not just a relic, not just a wreck. It's a story trapped in motion, a frozen second from a dying war that never stopped echoing. Its mission failed, its crew perished, but its presence endures, half history, half warning. The sea has no mercy, no allegiance, no memory of who was right or wrong. It only keeps what we leave behind. And beneath those cold, gray waters, U-864 still rests, her secret sealed in rust, her mercury bleeding into time, her steel bones whispering through the deep, "We were here. We were never meant to be found." Over the years, the U-864 has become something more than a relic. It's a living wound on the ocean floor. Every diver, every scientist who has approached her wreck speaks of the same feeling, a pressure, not from the depth, but from the history itself. It is as though the sea remembers what mankind wants to forget. The twisted metal, the leaking mercury, the silence, all of it stands as a monument to the arrogance of an empire and the cost of secrecy. By the 2020s, nearly 80 years after her sinking, the wreck was once again at the center of attention. Satellite imagery and sonar surveys revealed that parts of the wreck had shifted slightly due to underwater landslides caused by powerful North Atlantic storms. Engineers feared that if the wreck moved too far, it could rupture completely, releasing what remained of the mercury trapped within its corroded steel cylinders. The Norwegian government launched another inspection using remote vehicles, their cameras piercing the darkness that no sunlight had touched since 1945. What they saw was chilling. The submarine's bow section had collapsed further into the seabed, and streams of metallic mercury shimmered like liquid silver in the light of the ROVs. But then, they found something else, personal items scattered near the breach. A cracked wristwatch. a pair of binoculars, a rusted Luger pistol, and a small, corroded locket, still closed, resting beside a torn fragment of uniform cloth. Inside, preserved by the cold, was the faded photograph of a young woman holding a child. A reminder that even in the machinery of war, humanity had lived and died. The discovery reignited the debate once again. Should they disturb the wreck to recover the artifacts, or let the sea keep them? The answer, once again, was silence. To touch the Iron Coffin is to awaken her. And no one wanted to be the one who opened the door to something so fragile, so poisonous, and so sacred. Meanwhile, historians pieced together the final transmissions of the U-864 from German naval archives. The last message received from Captain Wolfram was simple: proceeding as ordered. Minor mechanical problems. Continuing course. That was February 6, 1945, the same day Launders fired his torpedoes. The two men never saw each other. One hunted by sound, one fleeing through darkness, both obeying orders that would seal their fates forever. To this day, the engagement between HMS Venturer and U-864 remains the only recorded instance in history where a submerged submarine sank another submarine while both were underwater. It was a technological miracle and a human tragedy. Launders' precise calculation had been perfect, but its outcome, the death of 73 men and the birth of one of the ocean's most toxic graves, would haunt generations. The sea around Fedge is calm most of the year, but locals say that sometimes, when the fog rolls in and the air goes completely still, you can hear faint sounds, like knocking from below. Fishermen call it superstition. Scientists call it shifting metal under pressure. But for those who know the story, it's something else, the restless memory of men who never made it home. Now, the U-864 lies motionless beneath a shell of sand and rock, her body crushed but her story unbroken. Every current that brushes her hull carries a whisper of the past, the sound of engines that will never start again, the pulse of a mission that was never completed. She was meant to change the world, but instead, she became a warning carved in steel. And perhaps that is her legacy, not the weapon she carried, not the secrets she held, but the silence she left behind. A silence that echoes louder than any explosion, reminding us that the sea keeps its dead, and it never forgets their stories. The Iron Coffin rests, but she is never truly still. And so, beneath the cold gray waters off the coast of Norway, the U-864 remains broken, silent, eternal. Her steel bones rest on the ocean floor, her deadly cargo sealed within, her crew entombed in darkness that no light will ever reach. The sea has claimed her, and time has erased her colors, but her story endures, whispered by the currents, carried by the waves. She was meant to deliver technology that could change the course of a dying war, yet she became something far greater, a warning carved in iron. A symbol of what happens when ambition outruns reason, when secrecy outweighs humanity. The men aboard never saw the faces of their enemies, never heard the torpedoes that ended their lives. In their final moments, there was only the sound of the engines, the hiss of air, and then the sea. For them, there was no victory, no return, only silence. Now the ocean watches over them. The currents move softly through the wreck, brushing across rusted control panels and shattered pipes, as if the sea itself mourns. Above, storms pass, ships sail, generations come and go, but below, nothing changes. The Iron Coffin lies still, not as a weapon, not as a relic, but as a reminder that the sea forgives nothing. That truth, once buried, always finds its way to the surface. And that even in the darkest depths, the past is never truly gone. She sleeps now, in the cold embrace of eternity. A grave of steel and secrets. The last echo of a dying empire. The U-864, the Iron Coffin, will never sail again, but the ocean will remember her forever.